Actually, I don't have to do neither one of them, but I'll do the short one. All right, here we go. And we're off. Uh-oh. Feedback. All right, there we go. All right. Hey, everybody. Good to see you guys. I see a lot of people in here. That's good. Got 10. Hopefully some more people join. We're gonna be talking about the Seventh Amendment. Actually, Majorly Awesome Rogue Nation is gonna do most of the talking. I'm just providing the platform to do it on. So thank you guys for being here. And whenever you're ready, Captain or Major Lee, go ahead and take over, man.
Excellent. All right. Well, we waiting for a minute for more people to come in, or are we going right at it?
Well, it's totally up to you, man. I don't know how many people is going to be here, so it may not be no more people in than here than now. So,
all right. Well, that sounds good. Well, do you have anything on the Seventh Amendment so we can read it word for word, or because I don't know verbatim, but I do know it's the suits at common law above $20 are right to have a trial by jury.
right,
But I don't know if that's all of it.
Give me a minute, and I'll pop something up here right quick. We can do a video. Let's do that. We will share a video right quick. Got one set up here, and then we can talk after we watch some of it.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. It was Thomas Jefferson that said educated citizenry is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people. And that's why we're going cray for the learning on the internets and the YouTubes. We're going to see if we can knock out the Seventh Amendment to the Bill of Rights. It's not going to take long. Straightforward, short and sweet, step in a civil, baby. So let's do it bang bang style. Let's do the learning on the YouTubes. All right, let's read the words. Are you ready for me? Watch this.
In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of common law.
All right, there's really two parts here, guys.
All right, if you want to say something now about some of it, that's cool, because I got to cut it out anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just wanting to make sure that that was the gist of the whole amendment, and that there wasn't something that I had forgotten. It's been a minute since I had read it, but a couple of the important facts of that is that the right to a jury trial is one of society's long-standing rights, talked about in the Magna Carta. It was actually used before the Magna Carta in England, I believe in 1164 or 1184. They started using it for land disputes, trials by jury. So it's really been with society for a long time, and a lot of the founders, thought it was perhaps one of our greatest rights, and I tend to agree. For the simple fact, and we'll get into it, is the jury is almost like the fourth part of government. You got executive, legislative, judicial, but then we have the jury, and so the jury's power is really neat in the fact that it can. So
cutting out, Major
for
Lee,
example.
You're cutting out a little bit.
I'm driving on the road, so I don't know about hitting any spotty reception here or there. Can you hear me?
All right. You're back now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, part of the amazingness of the trial by jury is the fact that the jury can nullify laws, and we don't have to have them, legislated. For example, with the marijuana laws, if people that were getting arrested for selling pot were going before jury trials, and the jury was nullifying or finding them not guilty, even though they are clearly guilty, that's sort of our way of nullifying laws that we feel are bad. You know what I mean? Like the jury saying, yes, even though he is guilty of breaking this law, we don't believe that this law should exist, so we're going to find him not guilty anyway. And that's why they've worked so hard at not telling people about jury nullification, is because that's like the unseen power of the people against unjust laws. So it's really, I think, an important right, but it's one, again, that's been swept to the side. When we first put that in the Constitution, when you went to a trial, a jury trial, it was a jury of your peers, which actually meant that the people that were on the jury knew you. It wasn't like they picked strangers to try you. It was actual people in your community, maybe your neighbor or, your teacher or whoever, was in that community. It was people that actually knew you. And I think that was a much better system than getting 12 people that don't know you, because it's hard to know a person's intent. It's hard to know if this, something a person does is out of character, or, there's a lot of stuff that goes into, being convicted of the law. Intent is being one of them, but it's kind of really hard to know a person's intent. I mean, even when they tell you, who's to say that they're telling you the truth? So I think back then when people could judge based off them, personal knowledge of someone for 20 years and their character, I think that was a much better system for finding out the intent of a crime,
No doubt. The 7th Amendment is you got a right to have a jury trial, right? But, and there's a big but here, right? Unless there's COVID, you don't get your damn jury trial. You know what I mean? Until they get ready for it, right? So,
right.
They won't. Anyway, it's you don't get nothing with this pandemic going on, let alone your jury trial. But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine, boss. Anytime you want to throw something in there, just let me know. But yeah, and again, you're right with the COVID and them denying you your right to a, I don't want to say speedy trial because that's subjective. They can,
right.
Depending on public health conditions, they can push back the trial date as long as it's not discriminatory against one person. And they're doing it for everybody or whatever. The same thing with a jury trial, but we got to understand, the right to a jury trial is a society issued right. It's not a natural right. It's not an unalienable right that God has given you. The right to speak because He gave you a voice box. The right to a trial and the right to a jury trial comes about from society itself. Nobody living on a deserted island has a right to a jury trial, so it's a society right. It's what's known as a civil right, and unfortunately they can enlarge it or restrict it or even take it away. Like again, as we see during COVID. So, I mean, it would be more apt to say it's a privilege of our society, because in a lot of societies you don't have a right to a jury trial.
Right.
You know, you might have the right to get shot in the head on the street. That's your right. You know, so it's not a human right. It's not something that comes to us naturally. It's something that our society allows or deems we should have. So, but in a free society like ours, it's instrumental, and it's instrumental as long as it's being used correctly, which it's not being used correctly now. You know, now they're just picking 12 strangers. You know, back in the day, juries were finders of fact and law. Now they're just finders of fact, and the judge tells them what the law is. Whereas before that wasn't the case. So it's definitely not being used like it should be. Again, it's being twisted to push their agenda and fit their narrative. You know, just like you know, state prosecution. When we first started the country, there were no state prosecutors. If you wronged another man, he would be the one that would bring the charges against you in court. It wouldn't be the state of New York or the state of Delaware or wherever. You know, it was the actual person you wronged. But now, because the state has grown so much and it needs that revenue, then now it's the state prosecuting all these cases against you. And usually for victimless crimes, prostitution, drugs, traffic offenses, code violations, you know? So, you know, that's why it's important to be out there, you know, fighting for each and every one of these rights to expand them, because they can be expanded, and we need to expand them. We're not at the pinnacle of freedom. You know, just because we're in the freest country in the world doesn't mean we've reached that pinnacle and we can now sit on our butt and you know, not do anything anymore. We have to keep fighting, because otherwise they're going to keep taking. So there has to be that opposite force of us fighting against it and trying to enlarge it, you know?
No doubt. Let's check out some more of this video and see what else he's got to say. How about that?
Yeah, I'm down.
Let's do that.
Guys, and they're really straightforward. The first part is in reference to a jury trial in a civil case. According to common law, this goes back to Great Britain and kind of judicial decisions that occurred over there, springing forth from the Magna Carta. So there's a couple of exceptions to common law, but basically what it means is if it's not a criminal trial, that's taken care of, the Sixth Amendment, that you have the right to a jury trial if there's a lawsuit, if you're suing somebody or being sued, except for maritime cases, which is like naval kind of stuff. You're suing the government, or if it has something to do with patents, pretty much any other lawsuit type of case, you have the right to a jury trial. That has been defined as having at least 6 members on the jury. So it has to be a unanimous decision. Now, this is for federal cases, of course. This is an amendment that has not been selectively incorporated, which means that the judicial branch has not interpreted the 14th Amendment. No state shall deny its citizens equal protection and the Due Process Clause, and has basically incorporated most of the rights in the Bill of Rights, but not number 7. But it doesn't matter, because every state has jury trials for civil trials. Now, the second part, in reference to this kind of facts thing, basically the idea is there's a big worry that Article 3 and Section 2 specifically, and you can look at that right up on the wall, basically is saying that the Supreme Court has the right to review appellate decisions based on fact. So the big worry is that the courts that are appointed are going to be able to basically nullify jury decisions. So on facts. So if a jury decides that, I don't know, somebody gets awarded X amount of money, or that there was a certain type of pollution that led to a disease, and that disease now needs to be compensated by a company or something like that. The fear is that because of Article 3, Section 2, that the federal branch would be able to change the facts facts of decisions that were made by jury. So basically what this says is I don't think so. I think what's going to happen is you can have appellate jurisdiction. You can look at constitutional issues, but you're not going to re-examine. It's called the re-examine clause. You're not going to re-examine the facts that were found true by a jury. It's none of your business.
There we go. All right. I think that's a good place to stop.
Absolutely. And I want to point out what he was talking about with the 7th Amendment and the 14th Amendment not tying it to state actions. A lot of people don't realize that before the 14th Amendment, the Bill of Rights did not protect U.S. citizens from state action. So, for example, you couldn't claim the Second Amendment before the 14th Amendment. You couldn't claim the Second Amendment protected your right to bear arms in your state because the Bill of Rights didn't apply to state citizens until the 14th Amendment. And then that's when the due process clause kicked in. Now, every state's got their own constitution, and every state has their own Bill of Rights. And of course, every state had the right to bear arms back then, even before the 14th Amendment. But it's real important to note, again, that until the 14th Amendment came along, it did not bar state action against those rights. It only barred federal government actions against those rights, because we have to understand that when the Bill of Rights was included into the Constitution, it wasn't included for state citizens. It was included for citizens that were living in Washington, D.C., and any territories and properties that were owned by the United States, like we own, Puerto Rico, Guam, Samoan Islands, that stuff now. But that's what the Constitution Bill of Rights applied to, and that's who it applied for, because the states already had their own Bill of Rights. All right. And a lot of the Bill of Rights from the Constitution are actually taken from the Northwest Ordinance, which is one of 4 founding organic documents of the United States. Every time a country, a nation is created, they have what's known as a founding organic documents. And our 4 organic documents, all of them are still law. You can still find them in the Federal Code of Regulations and what's known as the front matter. And those are the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Northwest Ordinance, and the U.S. Constitution. Those are our 4 founding organic documents, okay? And again, they're still in effect. Although, like, the Constitution has superseded the Articles of Confederation in most places. But for example, the Articles of Confederation gave us, the name of the country, the United States of America. And like that part would still be applicable today, whereas the Constitution does not spell out the name of the Union that it's forming. So that 14th Amendment and that tie-in is pretty important. And there's case law throughout the ages that pretty much tell you exactly what I'm saying. I think it was the twinning case or something of that nature, where the judge basically said, none of these rights are protected from state action. And even then, back then, those rights only applied to the white landowners of the territories of the United States, and not the states themselves. They didn't apply to African Americans. They didn't apply to women. They didn't apply to, Chinese immigrants or German immigrants or Polish immigrants or anything of that nature. So, when you're talking about a right and you're trying to say, well, this is a natural right and it's unalienable, I mean, we have to look at the whole scope of it and understand, if it was natural, then everybody would have that right. People in China would have that right. People in Africa would have that right. And definitely women and African Americans here in America would have had that right. as soon as they became, classified as citizens or something. Instead, they had to fight for these rights. They had to fight to have these rights given to them. So when a government gives you a right, because society demands that it's, their right, they can take it away. That's what the civil means in front of civil rights, is that it comes from civil government, civil society. So, these are things we have to look at and understand, because right now, as it stands, a lot of people have taken the unalienable rights that Jefferson was talking about in the Declaration of Independence and putting them in place of the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution, but they're not interchangeable. They're two different sets of rights. One is rights that men have in nature. The other is rights that men have in society, and they're very different. So
I got North Chester County News. Jump up here, man, if you got questions about the Constitution.
Everybody jump up if you want to get up here, man. Let's make it a talk here.
Yeah, he asked the question. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. I know you're driving. I'd like him to come up here and ask the question. So hit the link on that's pinned on the top of the chat, Chester County News, and come up here. Anybody else that wants to come up here and talk about the Constitution, it ain't just got to be the 7th Amendment. That's kind of what we focus. The focus is tonight. But if you got any questions, it's a good time to jump up here because the 7th, is pretty almost cut and dry. It don't take a lot of time to talk about it, so we can talk about others as well. So hit the link, come on up if you got questions, guys. And nobody's coming up. So anyway, continue. I'm sorry, man. It's good questions. I've seen some questions in the chat, pop up.
I can't read it because I'm driving. Unfortunately, I'm trying to keep my eyes on the road.
No doubt. Okay. North Chester County News says, let me see if I can read it. It says, what happened in 1883 that changed the way the U.S. was incorporated, and did that change our constitutional rights? That was his question.
He might be talking. There was a charter act for D.C., I believe, in 1871, 1873, somewhere around that time. But that really had no effect. The bigger effect, I think, was during Reconstruction. And he might be also talking about that as well, when, the southern states got carpetbagged and they all had to, sign on to the 14th Amendment before they were allowed back into Congress. If you look at the Reconstruction Act, you can see it's pretty much a strong-arm tactic to get the states on board with the 14th Amendment. And of all the southern states, only one of them didn't have to go through Reconstruction, and that was Tennessee. And that was because they okayed the 14th Amendment. All the other states were not okay in the 14th Amendment, and that's why they got put under Reconstruction. And then once they okayed the 14th Amendment, then they were signed off to come into back into the Union or whatever. But there's a very interesting speech given by the governor-elect of North Carolina in 1868. And you can Google it. And within like the first, couple of paragraphs, he states that there's something weird going on in the fact that they are no longer considering North Carolina a state, but rather a subdivision of the United States, like of the political body. So, it's interesting stuff. A lot of stuff's hidden. So, we could just take bits and pieces that we get and we see and try to, form it out from there. But, without being in those corridors of power or having access to those records, it's hard to really pin the tail on the donkey, I guess you could say.
Right on. North Chester County PA is up here now, so if you got something to add to that, Chester County.
I'm sorry, I had to get on. My question was, something happened in the 1860s where the way the United States was incorporated changed, and that's come up in a lot of discussions over the last several months. And I wanted to understand how the Articles of Incorporations changed in the 1860s. Do you have any knowledge of that, Major Lee?
Not about the Articles of Incorporation. I mean, every political entity is incorporated. It's the only way to form a society is through contract. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to enforce obligations and rights. So every civil society ever known to man has always been through a contract. And while they'll, that's why when you're driving through your county or whatever, and you're coming on a new county, it'll say incorporated in 1845 or incorporated in such and such. And it's a different corporation than Walmart or whatever. It's called a body corporate or a body politic. And every person that lives inside that jurisdiction is what's known as a constituting member of that body. So, and that means basically that you're on the hook for the money, whatever they decide. And, you're on the hook for whatever laws they decide to pass. You have to obey and that sort of thing. But you also, have a chance to make the law and decide how much money, supposedly through the voting process or your representative. I don't really know how well that actually works. I think it doesn't work at all myself, but that's what they had given us, or we've decided that's good enough for us. So I don't know any particular instance of a change of incorporation. I like I said, I do know there was a Reorganization Act of DC, I think in 1871. But I don't think it's as detrimental as a lot of theories online make it out to be. A lot of people try to switch, take that moment in time, and the 14th Amendment as well. L.B. Bork, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him, but he wrote a book called The Red Amendment, and he basically attributes that amendment to flipping our country from freedom to slavery. And there's a lot of theories and stuff out there, but I haven't heard one that I think holds any kind of legal weight as far as doing anything detrimental in that time frame. I tell people, we were, and rightfully so, men in society are automatically subject to the government, that they live under. That's what the word, government means. The first word, govern. You can't govern people that don't have to listen to you. You know what I mean? So that's anarchy. So if you're living in a society and you have a government, they are there to govern you, which means tell you what to do. And if you don't obey, to enforce penalties against you. That's the whole word government in and of itself. So,
I think that it was the 14th Amendment, which was ratified in 1868, is where it changed the way the states are incorporated and the rules that they had to follow. That's the thing that some people come back to.
Right, and there is some truth to that, and let me explain that. Before the 14th Amendment, when you were born, let's say born in Orlando, Florida, okay? You were born in Orlando, Florida. You were a state citizen, what they called a state citizen back then. And only because your state was part of the United States would you be considered a United States citizen. As a matter of fact, they didn't even really call people United States citizens back then because you were a state citizen first. And because of the fact that your state was in this union, you know, you were a United States citizen after. We could see the same thing in the European Union, okay? People born in Spain are, you know, Spanish or Spaniards, you know what I mean? That's their state. And then because of the fact that Spain is part of the European Union, they're also European Union citizens. But first and foremost, they're Spanish citizens. And that's the way it was before the 14th Amendment. So we kind of had our allegiance to each state, was tied to each state. After the 14th Amendment, our allegiance was switched from the state to the national government. We were United States citizens who just so happened to be a citizen of the state that we resided in. It's pretty much how they call it. And I've got an excellent article, a legal thesis on citizenship before and after the 14th Amendment. And I'll have to look at that and get you guys the link. And, you know, put that in the comments here at a later date. But it's really intricate. And, you know, again, the law and words are what they use to manipulate us. So we have to look at everything they give us with a magnifying glass. We can't just take their word on it anymore. You know, we can't just go through school and get the U.S. geography textbook that they hand out nowadays and be like, you know, oh yeah, this is definitely what it is, because, you know, 9 times out of 10, if they're pushing some kind of agenda, they've got some narrative in there that is, you know, totally wrong from, you know, what they were even teaching 100 years ago. If you compare the two books together, you know, like if you pick up a textbook, a history textbook today, which I have done, I mean, I had to stop reading in the first chapter because I counted the word democracy like 15 times. I didn't see the word republic once, you know? So they're definitely trying to change the narrative on us. And again, the way they're doing it is through legalese, through, you know, through the law and through the manipulation of words. So it's not as cut and dried as a lot of people would like to assume.
No doubt. Whenever you get finished talking about the 7th, can you talk about the different platforms that Activism News Network's on now?
Yes, sir. We are on Roku. We are on Fire Stick. We are on Android TV and Android phones, as well as desktops. Before I left on my trip, I did redo the site so that way everybody has their own channel on it now. So that way nobody has to look through the videos and wonder whose it is. All of each individual videos are going to be under everyone's names. I'm going to be releasing a whole slew of exclusives only to the network, because I'm trying to build up the subscriber base there, because again, I find that this endeavor is going to be able to create more change than me individually on YouTube. We are also working on the Apple platform. They had some questions for me I had to answer a couple weeks ago, so hopefully they'll be getting that in order. And yeah, everybody's going to be putting up a whole slew of new content. We've got some interviews that we're doing with a political strategist in Connecticut, Dan Newmeyer. You guys might have seen my interview. He's very well politically connected guy, and he likes what we're doing. He likes the way we're going, but what he doesn't like is the narrative that the government is giving to us and that trolls are giving us, like we're sovereign citizens or domestic terrorists. So Dan said that he would come on board and help us push the narrative that is the correct narrative, and that's that, you know, we're just patriots looking to have some damn accountability and you know, be able to get some answers from our government, you know what I mean, and whip them into shape, because they're out of shape. I mean, you know, it's bad. You know, we need to get these guys on the treadmill, I guess you could say, the treadmill of freedom, because
Right.
they're definitely out of shape. You know what I mean? As you guys know from my videos, Jeff's videos, all of our videos. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. It could be Anchorage, Alaska, or Key West, Florida, or where the hell am I, Maine? You know? And it's the same everywhere.
So would you host content from someone that's not a part of the network that maybe I feel is provocative or, you know, needs to be shown to the world? Is that something, or is it only the content from the individuals that are members?
No, we actually have like an amateur channel, and I just titled it amateur, but you know, basically we could throw anything up there that we want. It's less restrictive as far as the censorship goes of YouTube. So that's great for us, because if there are, you know, hard-hitting issues or topics, you know, YouTube squashes that stuff. You know, like we could do COVID all day long on our channel, all day long, if we wanted to discuss it, and YouTube will just shut you right down for that. So, I mean, if there's something that needs to be shown and they have video and they want to get it on there, I'm definitely more than willing to put that out there. You know, what we won't be putting out is like what most news agencies put out, which is fluff pieces about Kim Kardashian and Justin Bieber, or, you know, we won't be doing sports scores or the weather. You know, if you want to know what the weather is, look out the damn window. You know, we ain't going to be doing any of that stuff. You know, it's just going to be government, because that's what we need to focus on. That's what, you know, ruining most of our lives.
No doubt. Well, in my opinion, and this is, you know, and a lot of people agree. I understand it needs to be government, but it also needs to be change with citizens as well, right?
Well, yeah, it's a two-part process there, and again, that's why we wanted to start that up, so we can have that money funneled to that 501c3, which we're still waiting on the tax forms back from the federal government. No surprise there, right?
No doubt.
But that way we can funnel that money there, because it's a two-part problem. One of the problems is the citizen not knowing their rights. And then when a cop comes up and violates them, you know, by either getting their ID or what have you, not unlawfully detaining them, you know, the citizens are, you know, quick to reach in their pocket and give up their ID, because they want to dispel any kind of suspiciousness about them or whatever. You know what I mean? And thus that cop now feels empowered, because all the citizens, you know, 99% of the citizens are, you know, yes, master.
Yes.
So
that was my point. See, because a lot of people, well, I say a lot, but you know, we got trolls. Everybody's got trolls, right? That goes out there and does anything or does anything. You know, I started venturing out, you know, a little off of the government buildings and stuff, as everybody had noticed, right? But I feel it, and that's why I started doing it, and others do it too, not just me. I mean, I didn't just start doing it, right? That's the first thing they do, right? If you go to a business, the first thing they do, because they don't know, is call the police on you, right? And the first thing they hand the cops is their ID, right? So I think they learned something far as the Constitution goes, right? I think it's very important for them to learn just as much as it is for government to learn, right? I mean, and I'm not the only one, right? So that's why I started venturing out and doing, you know, other businesses and stuff, because the first thing they do, they think you're violating their rights by videotaping their property, right? So,
Right.
you know, in 9 times out of 10, they call the police, and then, you know, they come out and try to violate your rights, and then you got to set them straight, you know. So I think
Right.
citizens are just as much need to be taught just as much as the government does.
Absolutely.
Well,
Go ahead, Chester.
I also think that what is reported to the police, you know, it's like whispered down the lane or playing telephone, you know, as a kid. You get one thing that's reported, which is completely false. I saw something the other day where they said the guy was armed. I think it was Johnny 5-0. You know, he's armed. So they
I've
show
had that
up
happen.
10, 15 deep, right, in cops, when it was a misrepresentation of the actual facts.
Yep.
That needs to be fixed.
That's what they do, but that's exactly what they do, though. They call and lie just to get them to come out there code 3, or you know, get them to come out there just to put cuffs on you, right? They oh, he was on my property, or oh man, I think he's got a weapon, right? And a lot of times I do have my weapon on me. You know, it's open carry in North Carolina. I can do that, but you know, a lot of them don't know that I can do that, right? They call the cops and say, hey, he's got a weapon. And a lot of times they tell them, hey, well, he's allowed to have that weapon, but sometimes they don't do that.
So it's hearsay up until the point where they sign an affidavit, a sworn affidavit that says the person did this. So it's just hearsay, correct?
There's no replica. There's no penalty for them calling a false police report. I've never, and I've even said something about that. Well, why don't you arrest them for calling in a false report? And oh no, we don't do that. Yeah,
right. It is hearsay. It is hearsay up until, unless the officer sees it in his presence.
Yeah.
And if there's not, again, like you said, a signed affidavit, then yeah, it's just him saying it's this guy's word against my word.
Right. That's that's where we at, man.
They'll put you in the silver bracelets by the looks of it, based on hearsay, and that's got to stop.
Absolutely. Like, you could literally drive down the road and pick out some guy you've never seen before, pull into the parking lot, call the cops, tell them that they waved a gun at you, and he will get put on the ground and put in cuffs.
Yep. Absolutely. I agree. All right. Anything else about the 7th Amendment, guys? So we need to shut this thing down before it gets too long. Any other amendment? Any other questions? North Chester County, PA. Good to see you, by the way. I hadn't seen you in a while.
No, sorry, I got off topic. But,
no, you're good, man. No, you're absolutely 100% good.
It's all on topic.
That's right. Anybody else in the chat got any questions? Any concerns? Any questions about Activism News Network that you'd like to know? You guys really need to get a subscription to that. It's not that much. It's on like everything now. It's not just a Roku TV anymore. You know, these 5 different ways you can see the Activism News Network now. It's not just a Roku TV.
Yeah, and let me say something, Jeff. I mean, I can't remember a time. I don't know of a time, and people could correct me if I'm wrong, that, I mean, literally $4 a month can get you actual accountability. You know what I mean? Like, you can give money to the ACLU, and you can give money to this organization or that organization, but there's been no accountability, and we're at such a point now that, I mean, I got people that tell me they, got a subscription and they don't even watch the channel. They just, do it because they want to support accountability. And like I tell people, I say, if I had the amount of subscribers that I have on YouTube that I had on my Activism News Network, I said that these people would be through. They would be done. I mean, we would be able to do a whole lot more than what we're able to do now. I mean, now I'm barely able to pay for a trip up to New York to do 1 or 2 audits, but if I had that amount of subscribers over there, I mean, we could fly 7 people up to New York for a week and have them dig through the councilmen's, everything. Right. Yeah. There's going to be hell to pay once we get this thing off the ground. They're not going to like us at all.
I guarantee it.
And that's transparency. I mean, you have to. Unfortunately, we have to sign up for transparency today because our news media does not provide that. We're going to have to do it ourselves. Now, I'm not part of the organization, but there's no one else around who's going to provide this transparency because they're aligned with some entity, whatever that entity is. I mean, I view this group as being free people that want to take our country back. And unfortunately, it's going to maybe cost a couple bucks a month to get the word out. But it's
22 people, Chester, 22 of us.
It's going to get the corporate media off our back. And that's that corporate, the big corporation, the Google, the Facebook, the Twitter, we won't be able to get a message out unless we do it ourselves.
Well said.
Absolutely. But we have to be able to fight these media companies. And like I said, from the standpoint of us individually on YouTube, we're never going to make it. We're never going to get more than what we're doing now. You know what I mean? We're fighting for bits and pieces when really and I think we should be combining and we should be, stomping next. We should be taking over. I mean, we should make it so that way people don't want us to come to their town because they know they're going to get found out. You know what I mean? They're going to do everything in their power. If their police is acting up, they're going to put them in line because they don't want to see me and Jeff and Chuck Bronson and DPN going through their public records, going through their credit card receipts. You know what I mean? Literally outside in the bushes of the police department. You know what I mean? They're not going to want to see that. And they're going to change their ways. But it's the same thing with a kid in a cookie jar. If he keeps putting his hand in there and no one smacks him, he's going to keep doing it. And that's what the government's doing. And that's why, when News Now Cali and News Now Ninja got arrested down in Pritchard, that chief of police, he laughed at James because he's like, yeah, everybody says they're going to sue and nobody really does anything about it. Well, yeah, because we're strapped for cash. We don't have lawyers. You know what I mean? So we're kind of in a rock and a hard place. I want to be able to smack them. I want to have 10 lawyers behind me. I want them to know we mean business. This isn't a game.
Right. Everybody, every time, I'm sorry, Chester, every time that my rights get violated, all I see in the comments are sue, sue, sue. Well, give me the money to sue, 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 and I'll be happy to,
United we stand, divided we fall. There's strength in numbers, and you either are a part of it, you're with us, or you're against us, and for what's going on, and what I'm seeing is a lot of bad. When the George Floyd thing came down, they said, "Oh, that's only a tiny little percentage of what's going on," but the more I watch these videos, it's a bigger number than anybody ever thought. I mean, we have to take our country back. They're just taking over.
It's getting worse. It's getting worse.
Yeah, it is getting worse.
Way worse, especially with politicians we got now. Okay, I think we're getting off topic a little bit, but all right. Is anybody? You got anything else, Chester? Majorly awesome. Anybody in the chat got anything else to say? We're gonna shut this one down. Anybody?
All right. Be safe, y'all.
All right, thanks you, North Chester, PA. I appreciate you coming up here, man. Always a pleasure to have you up here on the panel. All right, Rogue Nation, any final thoughts? Major Lee Awesome? Any?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, I said, yeah, just be on the lookout for stuff in the next couple weeks. I'm on a trip. I got a lot of videos coming out.
No doubt. Y'all heard it, man. If you ain't subscribed to Rogue Nation, then you must be under a rock, because he's got some awesome stuff, man. And make sure you check out NC Tire Hunter, that little channel that's on YouTube. Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Thank you guys for being here, man. Make sure you go check out Activism News Network. It's really it's growing every day. There's more platforms now. There's more ways to get the subscription. Every piece of equipment that people have now, that you can get it on there now. So that's awesome. And at that, I'm gonna say thank you guys for being here. Thanks, Major Lee Awesome. I appreciate it. This has been the 7th Amendment, man. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. We'll do the 8th Amendment in the next week or so. Just look forward to that. Thanks a lot, man. Y'all have a good one, guys.